Jim Harold's Campfire is brought to you by Mack Weldon. Mack Weldon is a premium menswear essentials brand that believes in smart design, premium fabrics, and easy shopping. For 20% off your first order, visit MackWeldon.com and use the promo code Campfire at checkout. Thanks, Mack Weldon. Also, Jim Harold's Campfire is brought to you by Gaia, the streaming video service dedicated to exploring the cutting edge of metaphysics, ancient wisdom, and the unexplained. Get your first month for only 99 cents. Go to Gaia.com/campfire. That's Gaia.com/campfire. Thanks, Gaia.
Welcome to our gathering tonight. Here we share stories of ordinary people who have experienced extraordinary things. Sit back, relax, and warm yourself by Jim Harold's Campfire.
Welcome to the Campfire. I am Jim Harold, and so glad to be with you once again. Now, if you don't know what we do here, we're all about real stories of the supernatural. Could be ghost stories, could be cryptid creatures, could be UFOs, could be head scratchers. But that's what we do. We have real people come on and share their true stories of the supernatural, and we've got a great show for you today. And before we get to the show, I want to tell you about something else that is great, and I'm excited to be a part of. It is the Modern Love event in August in New Orleans. It's actually August 10th, 11th, and 12th. I'll be there on the 10th and the 11th, and it's the first national podcast convention for listeners by listeners. And there's going to be a ton of different shows there, not just me. Some of the people I know, Jerry Pauly from Hillbilly Horror Stories. Also, you're going to get Forrest Burgess from Astonishing Legends, and so many more. History Goes Bump is going to be represented, Generation Y, and many, many, many more. The convention is going to feature live shows, including a live campfire, a panel with multiple shows in one session. I'm going to moderate one on the paranormal, workshops for would-be hosts, Ask Me Anything sessions, and a party Saturday night for attendees. That sounds like fun. I hope you'll join us. Go over to pattern.love. That's pattern.love. And if you sign up and you put in the code CAMPFIRE, CAMPFIRE, you'll save 10% on your ticket. I hope that you will check it out. It's at pattern.love. That's pattern.love. I hope to see you there. And I hope you'll stick around because we've got a great campfire show. And this first call, well, this is a doozy. I love this one. Hunter is on the line, but he's not from California. He's not from Texas. He's not from Ohio. He's from New Zealand. My goodness. And we're so glad to have him with us. And not only that, Hunter's brought it in a big way because he has one of my favorite kind of stories. You know what it is. It's a head scratcher. And indeed, he's only been listening for 3 months, and we're so glad to speak with him all the way in New Zealand. Now, it is 10:21 in the evening here in East Coast time, U.S. What time is it over there now, Hunter, as we speak?
2:20 p.m., so it's basically 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow. So it's, about 16 hours difference? My goodness. Well, thank you so much for taking time. We appreciate it. But that goes to show if you're international, we'll make it work, and we love to talk to our international callers. Hunter, tell us about this head scratcher.
Okay, so it was probably about 3 years ago now, and me and a couple other friends, me and two other people that I was close with, and we were just, I think it was about 15, we were all about 15, and we have this really old hospital in my town, and it's a really creepy old hospital that was used during World War II, I believe. And we went to take some photos, because I do photography a little bit, and we're hanging around there for a little bit, but had a really weird vibe, and it always has. I've heard that from a lot of people. And as we were walking away, ready to leave, I turned around. I had a feeling. I turned around, and in the top left-hand corner of the building, I was facing the road. I looked in the window, and I saw like this old. It was like a nurse, and she had a really like dead stare, like she was staring at me. And I said to my friends, I was like, "Hey, do you guys see that?" And every single one of them explained to me, and they were seeing the exact same thing.
Huh.
Now, the scary thing was we all started to like, our vision started going weird. So like, it was like a black, like, it was circling in, and it was just like darkness and like motion sickness. I was feeling motion sickness, and it was really weird. And all of a sudden, everything looked new, and it was bright. There was like all the grass was like beautiful and green. The hospital, like it was an old brick hospital, and it looked like all new. And it was almost like time travel. It was really weird. It's like we went straight back to when like the hospital was like built, almost like the day it was finished, and it was like so surreal. It was the craziest thing ever. And we stared at it for like quite a while. It felt a while, and I don't really know what happened after that. All I remember was just running. We were running away, and that's all I can really remember. It was really crazy. It's almost like we got brought back in time. It's like the nurse we were staring at like showed us something.
Now the nurse, so the hospital is abandoned. So when you see the nurse, does she look like she's a part of the abandoned hospital, or did she look like she was a part of the hospital when it was new and in action?
She looked like she was wearing like the nurse uniform, and it looked like she was in action. It looked like she was like still doing her job.
Wow.
And the scary thing is, another scary thing, I actually went back there to do some more photography, another friend, and I noticed where I saw her on the building, it said nurses' quarters, and that's where they used to stay. So the room I saw her in was where they all used to stay, and it was the nurses' quarters. And that's where I saw her. So that was that gave me some chills when I saw that. I was like, wow. And I've never forgotten it.
Oh, I couldn't imagine that you would forget it. What a great story. Now, let me ask you, do you think it's actually possible just for a few moments in time, or it sounds like you're not even quite sure how long you were there, that maybe even your mind was playing tricks on you in terms of the length of time you were there, but whatever time you were there, do you think you actually did go back in time, possibly?
See, this is the crazy thing. Like the feeling that I had I felt motion and like flashes and the blackness that surrounded me. It's almost like it really did feel like I was like thrown through time. It was crazy. And that's what my friends described as well. Like they almost like picked up and just like thrown through time. It's really weird. It's a bit hard to explain, but the feeling's something like you'd have to actually feel it yourself to understand it. So
Sure.
yeah, I do lean towards maybe that's a possibility.
Wow. And nothing like that before or since?
No, just really just like stories from other people, just like seeing things, but nothing really as crazy as that. You know, just seeing like apparitions in the windows. Like I've seen a few myself, like shadows moving past, doors opening and stuff. Because the hospital's recently been condemned as well, because we had an earthquake here. So it's going to be bulldozed at some point soon, I'm pretty sure. But no, just like small apparitions and stuff, but nothing crazy like that.
Wow. That is a tremendous story. Well, Hunter, thank you so much. I'm so glad you found the shows, and we love to know that there are people all over the world listening. It is so neat, and especially when they take time to call in and tell us fantastic stories like this. Hunter, thanks for being a part of the Campfire. And please spread the word over there in New Zealand. I don't know that we have a lot of listeners over there, so we need all the help we can get.
I'm sharing. I'm telling people to join the Facebook group and everything. I reckon it's awesome what you're doing.
Well, I think you're awesome too, Hunter. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Tay is on the line from Oregon or Sierra Nevada. Where are you at right now, Tay?
Currently, I am in the Sierra Nevada foothills.
Okay, there you go. But nevertheless, I did want to say, Tay has been listening for a few months, found us on Spotify, and didn't realize I had a show called The Paranormal Podcast. Sometimes I don't do a good job of promoting that. Interviews with paranormal experts and authors and so forth. And she said she's a big fan of Coast to Coast. And I said, hey, if you like Coast to Coast, I think you'll like the Paranormal Podcast. So if you're listening and you've never heard of that show, shame on me, but we wanted to correct that. And Tay is so kind. She's calling to talk to us about her grandma. And she's a very special lady. And she's going to tell us some things that she has known that she shouldn't have known. But I guess Tay is glad that she knew them. And also, she's going to be asking for some special help at the end of our segment here. Tay, welcome to the program. And please tell me about Granny.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. So, just a quick backstory here. So, my grandmother, who is the matriarch of our family, and she's always been very in tune with all of us. But my connection with her has, spread over hundreds and hundreds of miles. When I was 16 years old, and I'm 28 now, she was living in Medford, where she is currently living, and I was here in the Sierra Nevada foothills. So I was 16 and I was being foolish, and I decided to sneak out of my house and go gallivanting out with friends. And we were even more foolish, and we decided we were going to drink. And then we decided that we were going to take a ride in a truck. And we were doing donuts in this field, and there was this broken hay barrel, and the wheels tucked under this hay barrel, and we flipped 3 or 4 times.
Oh my.
Now, I was in the back. My boyfriend was also in the back in those little bench seats that kind of fold out from the side. The passenger was sitting on a speaker. There was not even a front seat, and he was bracing himself while holding the window. So everything goes black. And the next thing that I remember is I'm opening my eyes and I hear this thumping sound. And I look above me, and the truck is on its side. And my boyfriend at the time had been, he said, "Cover your eyes." And so I did. And he had to kick the window in to get me out of the truck. So so he pulls me out of the truck, and I had hit my head, and everything was blurry and spinning. And my phone was in my cell phone. My very first one was in my right front pocket. And I'm sitting in front of this truck on the ground, on the dirt, kind of crying and shaking and just, it was very traumatic. And my cell phone rings, and I immediately think, oh God, it's my mom. She found me missing in my bed, and I'm going to have to tell her where I am. And, so I look at it, and it's my grandmother's ID. I just look at it for a second, and I just think to myself, it's 2:30 in the morning, and, she's an early riser, and there's no way, what could she want? So I answer my phone, and she immediately goes, "Are you okay? Are you okay? I saw it. I saw the truck. Are you okay?" And she's like panting, crying. She was so convinced that I had been very, very hurt. And I assured her that no, I was okay. And she goes, "You need to get Max," who was the passenger of, who was holding the he was bracing himself on that window. And he says, "You need to get Max to the hospital right away," which is weird because that's also my little brother's name. But so she knew his name. She saw the accident, and she saw the truck crushing my friend's hand as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
The question is how?
Exactly. And over the years, I've kind of prodded her there and, trying to get a feeling for, how she knows these things. And she says that, I just wake up from the, dead sleep. And she says that sometimes she hears things and sometimes she sees things like pictures or in a movie type of format.
Wow.
So yeah.
That is so neat, though. And the fact she was able to communicate with you, and she was a few hundred miles away, as I understand it, when all this happened. And yet she knew, and then she knew to direct you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes.
So she's obviously a very gifted woman.
Absolutely. When she sends me those little text messages that say, "Hey, you might want to remind yourself to calm down a little bit today and don't speak out of anger," and little stuff like that. And it just, it's a very comforting thing.
Yeah. And you pay attention, I bet.
I do. I've learned.
Now, we have to say here, your grandmother's been undergoing some health challenges, and in your entry, you wanted to make a request to everybody, and I think it's very appropriate for prayers for people who pray, or positive vibes. If people just want to send out positive vibes, I'll let you talk to the audience.
Okay, well, she recently had a triple bypass and then she had to have a tracheotomy. And it's just been a very slow process of healing. And I just want to ask all of your wonderful listeners if they could please send prayers and vibrations or whatever you have inside your heart out to us. I'm sure it'll find her. And we just really, really appreciate that.
Well, it seems like she's a very giving lady, and hopefully we can give back to her. And Tay, thank you for sharing this very, very striking and sweet story tonight on the Campfire.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Next up on the Campfire is John from South Carolina, and he's going to tell a story, one of those family stories, and I do love those, one from his grandpa. John, welcome to the program, and tell us what happened.
Hey, thanks, Jim. So this happened to my grandpa when he was probably about 8 or 9 years old. They lived out in Oklahoma at the time, and they lived on a cotton farm, so they didn't have electricity or plumbing or anything like that. And every morning, one of the boys would have to take turns getting up and going to the wood-burning stove and light the fire so the family could come down and heat up the kitchen, have breakfast and everything. And so one morning his brother woke him up, and it was his turn. It was about 4 in the morning, and it had been snowing really heavy the night before. So my grandpa goes downstairs, and in their kitchen where the stove is, they had a back door with a glass pane in it, and the pane looked out onto the back porch. And so he goes to get some wood that's just inside the door, and he sees a man standing outside on the back porch. And he told me he couldn't remember, obviously, what he looked like, but he had, like, long, stringy hair, and it looked like he was only wearing overalls with no shirt on.
Oh, my.
Which would be really weird because, obviously it would be freezing outside having snowed the night before.
Right.
So anyway, this scared him, and he ran upstairs and told his brother and, my great uncle, and he's like, what are you telling me for? Tell Dad. So they go in the room, and they wake up my great-grandpa and say, someone's outside. And so he tells, the older son, go put on your boots and get your shotgun. He does the same thing. And all three go back in the kitchen. He tells my grandpa, lock the door behind us. Don't unlock it until we come back. So anyway, they go outside. He didn't remember how long it was. Guess probably an hour. And they come back, and he lets them back in, and they both look really scared. And he said he never remembered seeing his dad look scared about anything. But his dad looked really scared. And basically, when they went outside, they had footprints in the snow that led away from the porch, and the footprints went all the way around the house. But there were no footprints leading to or from the house in the snow. So basically,
man.
They went and they checked all the they checked all the outbuildings. They looked underneath the porch, and they couldn't find anyone or anything. They don't know where the footprints came from, but just footprints circling around the house, and fresh fallen snow. No footprints leading to or from. They never found anything, so he has no clue what it was.
And again, I love this. I bet your grandpa was not one like for flights of fancy. Like just kind of making things up and that kind of thing. I bet he was a pretty straightforward guy, huh? He
was, yeah. His name was James, and he went by Jim. And he was in the Navy nuclear sub.
Yeah.
And very straight-laced guy, like you're saying. Yeah, he did not. He liked to tell jokes, but when he told me this story, there
was no joke.
He had a good sense of humor, but no joke. I love it. Probably the scariest thing that ever happened to him.
I love it. Well, thank you again, sir. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And thank you for being a part of the Campfire.
Sure thing, Jim. Thanks for calling.
Jim Harold's Campfire is brought to you by Mack Weldon. Mack Weldon is a premium menswear essentials brand that believes in smart design, premium fabrics, and easy shopping. And I think if you try it, you'll learn to love it as I do. Now, Mack Weldon gives you the ultimate comfort in underwear, socks, shirts, undershirts, hoodies, and sweatpants. And they don't only look good and feel good, they also perform well. And the reason is because they have put a lot of effort into designing these products with the best materials. For example, their products start with innovative fabrics that each have their own unique purpose and story. A case in point, their silver line of underwear and shirts made with a natural antimicrobial material that eliminates odor. It's favored by Olympic athletes, U.S. Special Forces, and NASA. And dadgummit, if it's good enough for them, it's certainly good enough for Jim Harold, and I know that you'll love it as well. Now, why do these organizations, big time organizations, look at Mack Weldon's underwear? Well, for its ability to deliver smart performance. So, Mack Weldon decided to infuse this material in their socks, underwear, and shirts to keep us feeling cool and fresh all day. So whether you're working out, going to your job, going out on dates, or just wearing them in everyday life, well, the choice is simple. It's Mack Weldon. I love when companies put their money where their mouth is, and Mack Weldon certainly does that. If you don't like your first pair of underwear, you can keep it, and Mack Weldon will still refund you. No questions asked. So not only do they have a great return policy and a great product, but they make online shopping for men's clothes both easier and rewarding, because when you get that product, you're going to say, feels so good. And I got to tell you, I thought, underwear. What's with underwear? Well, it's kind of like, I don't know, if you ride in a really nice car and you're used to riding like a mid-range car, you kind of say, oh, now I see the difference. And that's what I saw with Mack Weldon. You know, I've been buying just the kind of stuff off the rack that, you know, the big brands, very basic type of underwear. And I got into a pair of Mack Weldon, specifically their 18-hour jersey. And those are trunks. And I'm like, wow, these are fantastic. And so easy to use the website. And the thing is my wife was really thrilled because I joked about last time, but it's probably literally true. I had some underwear probably that went back to the Clinton administration. So the time was here. And I definitely think that Mack Weldon is the way to go. And that's where I'm going to order all of my underwear now, plus all my other various things like socks. Just a lot of great product at Mack Weldon. And while wearing Mack Weldon, you know, I had my slower times when I was doing this kind of stuff. And then I had active times. And when I was out doing chores in the yard and so forth. And it held up beautifully and it felt great. And I think that you will enjoy it. So get 20% off your first order. Visit MackWeldon.com and use the promo code Campfire at checkout. That's 20% off your first order by visiting MackWeldon.com and using that promo code Campfire at checkout. I think that you will enjoy it because really they are bringing you the best in menswear. It's super convenient. They have that no questions asked guarantee, which I think is fantastic. I just think Mack Weldon is the way to go. Check it out. MackWeldon.com and use that promo code Campfire checkout to get your 20% off your first order. Thanks, Mack Weldon. Anna is on the line from Portland. She's been listening for a couple of years, and she said that the Campfire was the very first podcast she ever listened to, and it's still her favorite. And I think that's the ultimate compliment. Anna, thank you so much for joining us. And you're going to tell us about the perfumed ghost. I can't wait.
The perfumed ghost. So this happened to me. I used to work in theater here in Portland, and I was a house manager or a site manager, which basically meant that I had the keys to the building, and I would welcome in the audiences when there were events and make sure that the events started on time. And this happened when I worked in this very old building in December. It was about 2011. And this building used to be a Church of Christian Science that was built in 1908. And the history of it is since I believe it was a church for about 50 years. And then after that, it was a community center. It had been a homeless shelter, a Loaves and Fishes. So a building that was very charged with a lot of energy and a lot of people. This building is about 1 block long, and the description of the building is kind of important for the story. It's about 1 city block long. The lobby is shaped in a ring, like an oval-shaped ring with the box office in the center. And the box office has windows all the way around it, so the person working in that office can see what's going on in the lobby all the way around. And then on the outer ring, there's classrooms and whatnot that we would use during the week. At the either end of this oval-shaped lobby, there are entrances to the auditorium, which is the theater upstairs. And the theater still kept its original church pews, which I loved. So these very 100-year-old, very heavy hardwood church pews that were curved kind of around to face the stage. And the auditorium sat about 500 people. So it was quite a large building. I was house managing a show, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And it was during the second act, which means it's after intermission. And all 500 people are now upstairs again watching the second act of the show. And I had one intern with me, Oriana, and we were both kind of sweeping up and cleaning up, cupcake frosting and cookies and whatnot that are left over after intermission. And all of a sudden, I was hit with this smell of very strong gardenias. And I only found out that they were gardenias later when somebody had brought some completely unrelated, and I said, that's the smell. It was so strong that I could taste it. I was smelling my clothes to see if maybe I had spilled something on myself. The stairs to the auditorium are carpeted, so I was afraid that maybe one of our guests had spilled something. So I'm walking around trying to find where the smell is, but it's so incredibly pungent. Like I'm almost not even able to breathe normally.
Oh my.
It's very, very strong. And I'm also concerned about the quality of the show. I don't want the smell to waft over the audience and distract them from the story that's, being played out for them. So I go upstairs to the auditorium, and I see our stage manager climbing down the stairs from his booth, which sits above the audience. And he looks at me and gestures that he also smells something. It's very rare for a stage manager who's running the show to leave in the middle of the show. So we both go downstairs to the first floor, this lobby now, and he and I and this intern are now walking around this lobby trying to find where this perfume has spilled at. We decided to split up. And again, so we're walking around this giant ring that's about a city block long, and we're all split up. And for me, it felt like it was all around me or just in front of me. And I, even to the point where I was looking outside to see if it's just something in the air, wasn't coming from outside. And the three of us all ended up meeting in this spot, sort of at the entrance to at the bottom of one of the staircases to get upstairs. And it's almost like, this is so hard to describe. If it was a shadow or smoke, I would say the smoke had congealed into a form that was standing in the center of the three of us. But it was an odor. So we had all three been independently following this odor around, and it had led us to the spot where now all three of us were standing around it. And it got even stronger and even more overwhelming that made me step back. And when I stood back, I didn't smell anything. And then you could step forward and it was all around you. And so the three of us were like, that's so interesting. And we sort of started to measure that it was about a 3 foot by 3 foot area that had this very dense, perfumey, flowery smell. I kind of wanted to test this. I started to get a little creeped out, but I didn't know why. And I still wasn't honestly thinking ghosts. I was thinking, I need to find the smell. This is my job. And so I kind of wanted to test this. So I asked the woman who was working in the box office, who had been watching us through these windows, wandering around and kind of wondering what we were doing. I asked her to come over without telling her why. And when she hit that spot, she stopped and coughed and couldn't breathe and said, "Oh my goodness, what is that?" Now, I don't know what made me say this because, again, I was not thinking ghosts at all. But I said, I don't know if this woman doesn't realize that this isn't a church anymore. And then the smell disappeared and we couldn't find it. And we never smelled it again. I've never smelled anything like that again. I've, of course, smelled gardenias. Like I mentioned, there was a time a couple weeks after that where someone brought some gardenias to the theater. And I thought that's what that smell was. But again, I've not smelled a perfume currently that has that dense of it, like that old fashioned kind of flowery kind of smell. And I don't know what made me say that. But as soon as the word anymore, I don't know if she doesn't realize this isn't a church anymore. It just disappeared.
Wow.
And it surprised all of us. All four of us were standing there now. And I like this story because creepy things would happen to me in that theater. As I mentioned, I'm usually the one that would close up the building at the end of the night. And sometimes that meant 3 o'clock in the morning. So things would happen when there was no one else around. But this was one that we all very much experienced. And it was such an alarming moment. It was even more alarming when it disappeared than when it had appeared.
Now,
very creepy.
The interesting thing is it's kind of like a double whammy because when you talk about places that might potentially be haunted, you think of places that had a lot of feeling in them, right? And I know
Yes,
haunted
absolutely.
theaters are a very big thing with the ghost light and the whole thing that as a theater person, I'm sure you're very conversant in the fact that a lot of theaters are haunted just because of history.
Yes.
And to me, when people are on stage, they exude a lot of emotion, and maybe that kind of
Absolutely.
supercharges the environment. And then a church, I would think a church,
Yes.
would have a lot of emotion. There's probably been weddings and funerals and all kinds of things in a church.
Exactly.
You put those two together, that's a pretty strong combination.
Absolutely. And I was telling this story earlier to a friend today, and she asked me what I thought that it was. And I said that I'm generally a very pragmatic person, and I do believe in science, but I also really believe that metaphysics and quantum physics are separated by a hair, and that we as human beings aren't necessarily privy to what is in that hairline difference. We may not have the ability to see that dimension. We may not have the ability to understand it. But I always think that if we could, there is potential for an actual tangible explanation for what that is. And I think it's something around what you were saying, residual energy. That building was very emotionally charged, and was used to having a lot of people in it all the time. And this particular performance, when I thought back on it, was on a Sunday afternoon. And if it was the second act, that means it was about 2:00 in the afternoon, which is right about when church lets out.
There you
And
go.
there's churches in that neighborhood, one across the street. There was one right next door across the street. So that neighborhood in Northwest Portland is known for very old church buildings and religious buildings. So I'm convinced, as I've thought back on that was just a woman who was coming out of church, and she was probably hoping for a cupcake, but we'd already cleaned them all up.
Anna, I love this story. Thank you so much for joining us on the Campfire.
You're absolutely welcome. My pleasure.
Next up is Christine. Interestingly, she was a listener to the paranormal podcast, then found out about the Campfire on somebody else's podcast. Actually, Astonishing Legends are always very nice about mentioning the show. And I realized I need to do a better job. So if Campfire folks listen to paranormal podcast people listen to the Campfire. Works out perfectly. And Christine is going to have a story for us tonight. It seems very, very touching. And I can't wait to hear it, because those are some of my favorite stories. We like to, the spooky stuff is great, but these are the ones that really resonate with me. Christine, please tell us the story, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Jim. So there's three key players in this story, myself, my mom, and my mom's father, whose name was Richard. So I'm going to give a little bit of background information because it'll help to understand kind of the context of the story later. My grandpa Richard passed in 2010, and if I had to call to my mind things that I would associate with him, there's three things that come to my mind: cigars, coins, especially 50-cent pieces and silver dollars, and pranks or jokes. He was a jokester. So after he passed, I knew him for most of my adult life. I was close to 30, I think, when he passed. And after he passed, a lot of information kind of came to light. I'm going to be diplomatic and say he wasn't the best parent. And there was a lot of dysfunction in his family between, my mom and her siblings. And that kind of dysfunction led to my mom and I basically did not have that great of a relationship. And actually, by the end of 2016, we were really not even talking to each other. At that time, I was also kind of going through like a spiritual growth phase. And in about 6 months after her and I kind of had this out in May of 2017, I decided to have a reading done with a friend of mine who's a psychic medium. And it was a very enlightening reading, and a lot of my deceased grandparents came through, and my grandpa Richard came through, and he gave me lots of information that kind of, about what impacted my mother growing up. And one of the messages that he gave me during that reading was that my mom would come to a crossroads where she could have a change of heart, but it might not be till end of life. But that I should know that if she comes to that point and she goes down that path of building a relationship, that it's a sincere change of heart.
Mm-hmm.
So the following day, I was still kind of, mulling over everything in my head. And, I wasn't really sure, was this the real thing? Did she really connect with my Grandpa Richard? Or was this just kind of, was she picking up on things that she knew about me because she was my friend? So the next day, this was the day before Memorial Day. My husband went outside. I think he was going to get the mail or something. And he came back inside and his eyes were kind of big and he was excited and he had something in his hand. And he goes, "Hon, you're never going to believe this." I said, "What?" And he held out his hand and he said, "I found these outside." So in his hand, he had two 50-cent pieces, both with the same minted year of 2010, which is the year my grandfather passed.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they had been stacked on top of each other, perfectly aligned, so that if you lifted one up, the one underneath had the same, like the profile was facing the same way.
Huh.
And he found them on our driveway close to our house, which is about 10 or 15 yards from the street and the sidewalk. So for me, that's entirely too much synchronicity.
Sure.
2010, the year he died, coins was his thing. He was a jokester. We live on a pretty busy street, and if anybody were to come up to that close to our house, our dog would let us know. So I don't really believe that anybody just came and set him down randomly. So that was a pretty powerful message. I confirmed with my psychic medium friend the next day, and I just kind of told her about it. Before I could even finish, she said, "Yeah, he was letting you know that it really was him. He was really there." So that was really good to hear. And then the next part of this story is where my mom comes into play. So unfortunately, in July of that same year, last year, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And it ended up being stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Oh.
She opted for chemo, but it ended up not working. But in the meantime, while, we're all trying to go through this, she had come up to my house to visit. And with my sister, and when she left, she called me later and said she was kind of a little upset. She had lost an earring at my house, and it was one earring from a pair that her parents had given her, and it was the last Christmas gift she got from her dad. Oh. So she was kind of upset, especially with everything going on. So we looked all over. We looked out in our backyard where we had been sitting. We looked through our house. We even looked through the grass around the yard where she had been, and we couldn't find it. And, just kind of gave it up for lost. And I told Mom, "You never know. Maybe it'll turn up." So a couple of weeks after that, my mom and I got to sit down and talk, and she did have the change of heart. And the impact of this story for me is that because my grandfather came through in the reading, and he validated for me the next day that it was him by these things that I associate with him, the coins and the joking and the synchronicity of the 2010 year. When she had that change of heart, I believed it. There was no suspicion on my part, and we were able to move forward. And for the remainder of her life, we've been able to really establish a bond that we never had before. So that was a really powerful message that I got from my grandfather. And then in October, we found out she had opted to try chemo. In October, we found out that the chemo wasn't working, and she decided that she wasn't going to try anything else, that this was it. And it was shortly, about a week or two after that, I was outside with our dog in the backyard, and he had gotten loose and rolled in, I'm going to say, stuff. And I had to clean him off and get his collar off and get him in the house. And I went to bend over to clean him up, and I saw something shining out of the corner of my eye. And I looked, it was to my left, and I just turned my head and looked, and there was the earring. Now, now I'm going to tell you, we looked all over. I had just been out with the dogs earlier that day. It was about 10 inches in onto the concrete from the grass. So it was very clearly there. It hadn't been there earlier in the day. We had put away all of our summer furniture already, and we hadn't been out there moving things around. So it's not like it could have gotten shaken loose from somewhere. So I picked it up, and I was able to take it, and I gave it to my mom. And when I had put it in her hand, I just kind of smiled, and I just said, I think Grandpa found this for you. And she just kind of looked at me, and she got a little teary-eyed, and she said, I've been really upset lately about all of this and going through this process of handling the grieving of, my life is going to be ending. And she said, and I asked him to give me a sign that he was there for me. And she literally had just done that the day before.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a very powerful story that's, it's still ongoing. My mom is currently in hospice right now. And there's a lot of little things that happen between my mom and myself and her sister that just really have let us know that he's around watching out for her.
I think that's very reassuring, and I do believe that those on the other side watch out for us. And Christine, I wish you and your mom all the best, and thank you for sharing this very personal story on the Campfire tonight.
No problem. Thank you, Jim.
Jim Harold's Campfire is brought to you by Gaia, the streaming video service dedicated to exploring the cutting edge of metaphysics, ancient wisdom, and the unexplained. And keep listening, because I'm going to tell you how you can get your first month for only 99 cents. Now, you and I, well, we're different kind of people. Some people out there, they don't concern themselves with the mysteries of life, the afterlife, ghosts, UFOs, ancient mysteries, and the metaphysical, but we do. And that's why I think so many of you love the Campfire, and that's why I know you'll love Gaia just as much. Now, I enjoy comedies and dramas and things like that you'll see on those huge streaming services. But those big streaming services that are household names, they're missing something very important. The kind of content that we love. That's why you need to check out Gaia. So what is Gaia anyway? Well, Gaia is a video streaming service that focuses on topics we love with high-quality programming that you can't find anywhere else. And you really need to check it out because you can watch it on all of your devices. There's your Apple TV, your iPhone, your iPad, your Chromecast, your Android device, Fire TV, your Roku, your computer, and more. So if you're listening to the Campfire, you can watch Gaia. And here's some of what you're missing if you're not tuned into Gaia this week. David Wilcock has the latest edition of Wisdom Teachings, Shaping the Genetic Expression of Life. Our experiences of life are sculpted by what we do and what we think. David explains that the quantum energy of life gives us the tools we need to fight a spiritual war that we may not even know is taking place. Or perhaps you want to take a look at Regina Meredith's program, Open Minds. This week she's going to talk about accessing intuitive healing with her guest, Jerry Wills. Jerry shares some of his secrets to his intuitive healing process. He explains how we each can connect with our own healing power and take an active role in our own well-being. Or Beyond Belief with George Norrie, The Keys of Enoch. JJ and Desiree Hertak joined George, and they were inspired by what they say was wisdom from interdimensional beings. And both of them explain how they discovered the keys of Enoch to unlock new insights into the nature of humanity and the fate we all face. And that just scratches the surface. There is so much more. So here's how you get it. Just go to Gaia.com/campfire. That's Gaia.com/campfire. Now, there I've handpicked some shows that you can watch on UFOs and haunted places and Bigfoot, ones I thought you might enjoy. And heck, you can even watch my appearance on Beyond Belief with George Norrie. And the great thing about that page is you don't have to log in or anything. You can just go there. Don't have to give your email address. You could just watch those. And it gives you a real sense of the quality we're talking about with Gaia, which is, again, great stuff and exclusive content you can't find anywhere else. And after you see it, I know you'll agree. And at that point, I would like you to scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents. That's right, 99 cents. Wasn't a verbal typo. You didn't hear wrong. It's real, 99 cents for your first month. It's a great, great deal. And there's so much there. I know you're going to enjoy that first month and beyond. So go to Gaia.com/campfire. That's GAIA.com/campfire to see what's happening on the largest consciousness media streaming platform in the world. I love it. You'll love it. Thanks, Gaia. William is on the line from Music City, USA. That's Nashville, Tennessee, for you non-country music fans. Although I am, but I steer towards classic country. But anyway, William is on the line, and he's been listening for several years and found us on TuneIn while he was driving the graveyard shift. He's a He's a truck driver, and I was just commenting to him how much I appreciate what he and all the truckers out there do. They really keep our country going, and I think sometimes they don't get enough appreciation. William says he's about ready to celebrate his 30th anniversary driving truck. We really appreciate what he does and what all the truckers out there do. He has 2 stories for us, and the first one, I like this one, William, the head scratcher. Tell us about the head scratcher.
Sure, Jim. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Well, it started back in 1985. My mother and father got a divorce. My sister, she went off to college. And my mom, she's a retired nurse of 38 years, and she wound up getting a job working at the old prison in Nashville where they filmed the movie The Green Mile. And she asked my brother and I, she said, hey, you guys want to tag along? I said, yeah, sure, we'll tag along. So we went. My brother got a job working at a fast food joint, working graveyard shift, and he got off at 2:30 a.m. Me, I haven't found a job yet. I had some change in my pocket, so I bought this old 1974 Chevy Monte Carlo. It was an old car, 3-ball tires, bad muffler, bad shocks, you know. And I decided I wanted to just drive around to find out where things are and everything else. And I found this old back road. And at that time, we were in an apartment in Hermitage, Tennessee, which is about 11 miles east of Nashville. And back in the 80s, it was a kind of a small town. And I found this rural back road that cuts off about 4 miles to get back to the apartment. And I started taking this road back home. And one night I was driving down this road one summer night, and it was a beautiful night. The stars were out and everything. And I was just enjoying the night. The wind was blowing. I had the windows down in the old car, and I noticed something high up in the sky. It was a black mass that had a shape to it. It was really big, and the thing was slowly moving across the sky. Now, how I knew the thing was moving was that I noticed the stars in front of it were being blotted out, disappearing, and behind it, the stars were reappearing. That's how I knew it was moving. So I kind of pulled up onto the shoulder and was watching it for a few minutes, trying to figure out what it was. So finally, I just said, nah, forget it. So I went on home. 3 nights later, my brother calls me about 2:30 in the morning. He said, hey, my motorcycle won't start. Can you come get it? I said, sure. So I stumbled out of bed, get in the old car, and head over there, pick him up. We come out of the parking lot, go to the intersection, and to make a left turn. Now, at around 2:30, 3:40 in the morning, there's nobody out there. And a cop car passes in the opposite direction. So we make our turn and start down that rural, lonely back road. Now, there's nothing on this road. It's just a curvy, hilly, kind of 2-lane road. And right about that time, about a mile down the road, the headlights topped the hill and quickly sped up behind my car. And then the blue lights come on, and we stopped. And my brother, he said, what'd you do? And I said, I didn't do nothing. I wasn't speeding or anything. So the cop gets out. He walks over to the car, and he said, let me see your license. And I said, well, I don't have my license, officer. He said, you don't? I said, no. So I handed him a piece of paper that I got from the lady at the DMV. And she said, if you ever stop, give this to the officer. So that's what I did. And he said, what's this? I said, that's what the lady told me to do. He said, okay, hold on a second. So he goes back to his car. Another set of headlights come up behind him, another cop car. So now you got 2 cops and 2 cars. And then about a minute later, 2 more cop cars in front of us come around the corner with their lights on, and they block us in. So now you got 4 cop cars and 5 cops.
Huh.
One get out of one car, one get out of the other car. And my brother and I are saying, what is going on? So they get out and walk past our car and go to the back of the car where the other cops are talking. And then finally, the one cop I gave the paper to, he walks back to the car and he says, no, I say to him, I said, what's the problem, officer? I wasn't speeding at the one. He said, no, I noticed when I passed you back there at the red light, your car was a little loud. And he said, I'm going to have to give you a ticket for noise pollution. I said, noise pollution? And he said, yeah. I said, wait a minute. You know, how is it that you heard my car running loud when I wasn't revving the engine? You know, it was one of those kind of old mufflers. But anyway, he said, hold on a second. So he goes back to his buddies, and then he comes back again, and he says, sign here. So I didn't argue with him. I said, okay, whatever. So I signed the ticket and everything else. And then I thought that was it. Then he says, wait right here. I'll be right back. So he goes back to his buddies again. Now all five of them are standing there talking. Then all five of them walk back over to the car. And the cop stands there and stares at me for about 5 seconds. And finally he says, what are you doing on this road? I said, what are you talking about? It's just a regular road. Then he says, where are you going? And I said, my brother and I are going home. We live at the end of this road. Nothing. Another 5 seconds. They're all staring at us. I don't know. They're just staring at us. And then finally the cop says, move along now. Go on home. What was that about? So they all left. And then I told my brother, I said, well, I saw something on this road about 3 nights ago. Now I'm thinking, you know, why was there so many cops on this road, and why was he asking me all these questions about why was I on this road?
Right.
Now maybe I'm crazy, but maybe it had something to do with what I saw that night. I don't know.
Maybe.
I just thought it was strange.
It is strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Noise pollution? I mean, come on.
Do you think there was like a military thing or something? Or, I mean, could it be anything like that? Or that's odd.
Yeah. Maybe there was some kind of small hidden observation post on that road at that time back in the late 80s that they didn't want nobody driving them down the road. I have no idea. But I just thought that was strange, you know.
Yeah, wow.
I head scratcher.
That is strange because you just feel like they were hiding something. There was something they didn't want you to see or to know about. Luckily, they let you go and didn't take it any further. That's kind of frightening. It reminds me of something like out of the streaming series Stranger Things. You know, like those shows that used to come on back in the 90s, like Outer Limits or something like that. Exactly. Well, here, and I've got to say, you know, if you ever decide to hang up your driving gloves and do something else, you've got a future as a headline writer, because your next story, you titled it, Do Angels Drive 18-Wheelers, which is a great title. So there you go. So tell us about what happened back in 1989, your first year as a truck driver.
Sure. I had just got out of truck driving school, and I was working for this small trucking company. He had like about 20 trucks out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, back then, there were no cell phones and none of the luxuries we have now. And most trucking companies at 5 p.m. Friday afternoon, everybody's gone home. So you got nobody to call if you get in trouble. You know, that's just the way it was back then. But anyway, I spoke to my dispatcher that morning. He says, I need you to go to Greer, South Carolina to with one of our customers, Baxter Medical Products, and pick up a load and take it up to a hospital up in Richmond, Virginia for Monday morning. I said, okay. He said, here is the name of the place and here is the phone number. I said, okay. So I get close to Greer, South Carolina the next morning, Saturday morning. Now, they're all gone home. So I stop at a rest area, and there was nobody there at the rest area except this old truck. We called them bull haulers. And I pulled up behind this truck, and there was a payphone. So I went to the payphone and tried to call the number, but the office people at that place had gone home. So I said, well, how am I going to find this place? I knew it was in Greer, South Carolina, but I didn't know where it was. So I said, well, I'll just go use the restroom and then come back out and try to come up with some kind of way to find it. So I started walking towards the building, and as I was getting close to the men's room, I noticed an old guy standing right by the door, leaning up against the building, and he was wearing like overalls and he was had a long beard. Looked like he was about 80-something years old. And he was just standing there. And right when I walked past him, he said to me, kind of like a old gurgly like voice. He says, "You going to that Baxter place?" And I said, "Huh?" Yeah. And then he said, "Follow me." And he started walking. I said, "Well, wait a minute. I gotta go to the restroom." So I went in there and did my thing, and come back out, and he was leaving the rest area in his truck. So I took off running, and I jumped in my truck and tried to catch up with him. And back then, we all talked on the TV radio.
Yeah.
How you doing? And this, and that, and that. And I tried talking to him. Nothing. He never said a word the whole time. So I was about a half a mile behind him. So I see him up ahead. He gets off the exit. He turns left. And I tried talking to him again, nothing. And left turn, right turn, went down the back road and everything else. And then finally we come into Greer, South Carolina, and there's a big intersection. And the only thing he said to me, he finally come back on the radio. He says, "Turn left here. The place you're looking for is at the top of the hill on the left." That's all he said. I said, "Thank you. What's your name?" Nothing. And then he just drove on through the intersection and went around the corner, and I said, "No, it can't be that simple. Why am I following this guy?" So I go, why not? So I turned the corner, went up the hill, and sure enough, there it was right there. Now, it sounds like, well, maybe the guy has seen our trucks there before, but the elephant in the room, the real question is, why would somebody be standing there on a Saturday afternoon in a rest area with nobody there, and as soon as I get there, he leaves and tells me to follow him? That doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. Unless he's an angel.
Exactly. I mean, I can't. I mean, for 29 years, that has been bothering me, and I still to this day cannot figure out why was he standing there, like the guy knew I was coming, and like he knew that I needed help. And when I arrived, he said, "Follow me."
I think you just said it. I think that's exactly why I was there. And it'll be interesting to know who sent him. It's funny because it reminds me, when you were telling this story, it reminds me, I mentioned you're from Nashville, and I'm a classic country fan, old-time country music. And there was a great old song, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was called Phantom 309. And it was about, Red Sovine. And if nobody's ever heard of it, even if you're not a country music fan, look it up on Spotify or wherever. Phantom 309, about the story of a hitchhiker who gets a ride with a guy by the name of Big Joe. And Big Joe is very kind, and he gives him a dime for a cup of coffee, and they drop him off at a truck stop, and then he tells everybody, "Oh, this nice guy, Big Joe dropped me off." And they say, "Oh, yeah. He was he was a great guy. He got killed in an accident about 10 years ago." The ghost writer.
Something similar to that.
Yeah. So when you said that, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like this reminds me of Phantom 309.
Yeah.
I love it.
Do you mind if I say one more? It's real short.
Yeah. We're running a little short on time, but go ahead.
Okay. It's real quick. One day I stopped in Pocahontas, Illinois. My father had passed away in 1998, and he loved the outdoors. He loved birds, playing sports, everything else. I stopped there one night to sleep by 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up. I was parked way back in the back of the parking lot by a fence. I woke up. There's this robin, this bird, sitting on the fence staring at me. The bird stared at me for 20 minutes. I honked the horn. I started the engine, and the bird just stared at me. He looked left, looked right, but he kept staring at me. And then finally I said, well, I had to take a picture of this bird and show it to my pastor friend. So I took a picture of it with them old cameras from the 90s, the Kodak yellow camera, disposable camera.
Yep, I remember.
So I said, surely when I move the truck and back up to me, the bird will be scared off. No, the bird stayed there, and he watched me leave the parking lot. I said, what is this about? So later on, I get home. My pastor friend, Pastor Wayne, and I are in the laundromat. I said, Pastor, you have got to see this little bird. So I thumb through the photos. I show him a picture. Now, I see it in my hand. I said, there's the bird in the picture. And I show it to him. And I said, take a look at this bird. And he says, what bird? And I said, the bird in the picture. He hands me back the picture, and there's no bird.
Oh, my gosh.
Are you kidding me? I swear to you, this actually happened to me. 100% true. And then my pastor friend said something. He said, maybe you were only supposed to see the bird yourself. Maybe the bird was only meant for you to see. And then I thought about my father. Maybe that was him.
Might have been.
Yeah.
William, great stories. Thanks very much for what it is you do and being a part of the Campfire. And as they said in another old song, keep on trucking.
Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. I told you it was going to be a good one. And finally, if you say, hey, Jim, I notice you have about a dozen free episodes of the Campfire at any given time, but where are all these other hundreds of episodes that you supposedly did before? How do I get those? Going back all the way to 2009. Well, my friend, the answer is easy. All you have to do is go over to jimharoldplus.com. That's jimharoldplus.com. We've got a big sale going on over there, and you can get your first month for only $2.95. You go over there, click on the banner, sign up to become a member, and you get access to a whole treasure trove of shows, 300 plus Campfire episodes, and 500 plus paranormal podcast episodes no longer on the free feed. Plus, there's hundreds of more plus exclusive shows that I've done that have never been free and that you couldn't access unless you're a member of the Paranormal Plus Club. I think you should check it out. Of course, I am biased. But still, please go to jimharoldplus.com. That's jimharoldplus.com. It really powers our shows. And I thank you so much for listening today. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, stay spooky. Bye-bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Jim Harold's Campfire. Tune in again next time for more stories of ordinary people who have experienced extraordinary things.